the war between Israel and Iran has been escalating at a high speed, and things have been unfolding quite fast over the past 2 weeks. Well, what really happened? Israel attacked Iran with a claim that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. And when they did that, it was suspected that US was behind them. Of course, it was not suspected. That was just something so clear. And one of the major things that happened over the weekend was that actually Trump actuated his threat of bombing the nuclear sites in Iran. Well, why would the US be involved in the fight with Israel? Let me give a little context. When Israel got into the fight with Iran, they knew quite well that they wanted to destroy their nuclear sites, I tend to believe. But they did not have the capability to bomb them. The reason behind it said that the nuclear sites are in the mountains and around 80 meters underground. So Israel did not have a weapon that could actually obliterate these nuclear facilities. So they needed their big brother America, who has the equipment that would be able to facilitate such kind of attacks. Well, Trump hesitated and actually had threatened to be part of the bombardment or to be part of the fight. And he actually said that, he had actually previously said that he would take action within 2 weeks if there's no room for negotiation.
Does Iran have 2 weeks, or could you strike before that? Are you essentially giving them a 2-week timeline?
I'm giving them a period of time. We're going to see what that period of time is, but I'm giving them a period of time. And I would say 2 weeks would be the maximum.
Well, Trump, one might say he might be a dumb one, but I really found his diction quite intriguing. When he said within 2 weeks, that meant that he would have made a response, or he would have made an action, he would have taken an action within a 2-week period. So that does not mean that he was to wait for a 2-week period for the issue to elapse for him to strike. Well, things unfolded quite fast because as the war escalated and Iran seemed to be bombarding Israel a lot.
איזה פחד.
מה, עינב?
השם ישמור, איזה פחד.
מה קרה?
נפל לידי כמעט על הראש שלי. תהיל עכשיו.
Trump felt maybe it's a little bit, if I take time then things might get worse, so he bombed them. And it's been a tricky situation because if you look at it, there are missiles moving on both sides. However, we don't have the full side, we don't have the full story of what is really happening in Iran. It says that the damages and the losses that Iran has suffered are far much worse than what the kind of loss that they've imposed on Israel. However, I'm a person who believes that in times of war, there are no winners or losers, because any life that we lose is a life too many. Any property that we destroy, you can imagine all those skyscrapers that are being grounded. How much money is that when it comes to economic loss? They've also talked about financial loss and all others. Well, Iran has really acted brave, and their supreme leader, Khamenei, said that they are not going to surrender. One, they are not going to surrender when they were imposed, when they are not going to surrender to imposed war or imposed peace. What is the context to this? He says that they were attacked first. They did not attack Israel first, so Israel attacked them first. Second, they are not going to accept that they should surrender, because they say they did not begin this war, and there can never be imposed peace. Well, I felt that quite brave, but from my end, I'm looking at it as a war of egos. I don't like war. I don't like violence in any form, from domestic violence to state aggression, like in this issue. Well, as things have been escalating over the past 2 weeks, I got to wonder, could this be potentially the third world war? I could tell it definitely is. And I feel that Israel might have underrated Iran. Yes, they might say that they've won the war, or they might have their big brother US behind them. But would they really say that we've won the war against Iran? What are the stakes? Any life lost? Any property damaged? The time that we've lost, these people, the time that both countries have lost engaging in war, could have been used for other productive activities. Apart from that, we've had on the detrimental loss that the Iron Dome has suffered, losing quite expensive drones. As you've heard, there was an article I was reading that these drones, the defensive drones, are quite expensive as compared to the offensives. So there has been a lot of losses that have been suffered financially, economically, emotionally, physically. Quite a number of losses that have been suffered. And as long as the war continues keeping on, people will just continue suffering more. But I feel as Israel got to this fight, they didn't expect things to turn as the way they did. Maybe they thought that they were fighting against one of those militia groups that they're always fighting against, whether it's Hezbollah or Hamas. But Iran is actually a state that can actually protect itself. And got me wondering, what will be the end game? What will be the end goal? First, I started seeing a narrative that I don't really like, because Nelson Mandela once said that when these Western people want to kill you, they first begin by labeling you as a terrorist. After they label you as a terrorist, they start skirmishing your name, saying bad things about you, so that they have a motive to kill you. It happened with Saddam Hussein. They said he was a terrorist. Iraq wants to have a nuclear weapon or something like that. And then they did that, arrested him, hanged him. There was also the same case with Libya during the times of Omar al-Gaddafi. They also brought the same narrative and killed him. Then we had the recent one in Burkina Faso, where they tried to overthrow Captain Traore, but at least Traore was a few moves ahead of them and able to consolidate his power. However, we saw the same narrative where they are saying that this person is a terrorist, is funding terrorists, is using his country for the wrong way, blah, 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 blah. But now, Israel had chosen to first weaken their opponent. So they went to Iran, killed quite a number of their generals, about 9 of them. And after killing them, I think they were gambling on the fact that there would be gaps. However, Iran has seemed quite smart at consolidating power. I was actually reading an article where they're saying that even if Khamenei gets killed, there is already a succession plan so that there is no gap between, there's no power gap. The same narrative where they say these people are working with terrorist group and such have always been there. We've also seen the same with Afghanistan and Syria. So as they talk about these and they went ahead to attack the governance system of the military. Well, it didn't quite work as they expected, because in as much as they killed them, Iraq was quick to make changes and retaliate. However, there was actually one guy I was talking about previously where he was chosen as the chief of staff and general of military, but it only took 4 days for him to be killed by the Mossad. Well, they said that they are going to get to Iraq, do it really fast, but there has been a retaliation. US went ahead to bombard the nuclear sites and actually said that now it's time for war, it's time for peace, not war. But I felt, are you not being unfair? Why would you stab me in the back and expect me not to retaliate? You just stab me in the back and then you say, no, brother, you can't fight. I've slapped you. but you can't fight back. You can't slap me back. Well, gone are the days when you get slapped on one cheek, you turn your cheek on the other one to get slapped. Right now, we are not living in that gospel of turning your cheek. We are living in the gospel of being shrewd as a snake, but wise as a dove. And I feel Iran did the same. They've been categorical on saying that we are not going to accept any imposed peace or any imposed war. Well, of course, the international community has to come in and look at it, see what is it they can do. Can there be peace? Well, many people have tried to negotiate. The UN has come into this story, the IAEA, which is like the International Regulatory for Nuclear Energy, where they had said that actually Iran did not have any nuclear facilities. But now the problem is we are looking at it from the perspective of what are the American interests? What interest does America have in the war between Israel and Iran? Well, they say that these regimes since the 1980s are said that they would want to wipe out Israel. They would also want to wipe out the Americans. Valid, that is true, that has been always there. However, in as much as they've said that, have there been moves towards the same? One would say yes, because you would be a fool to think that Iran is actually innocent in this. They've been funding proxies. They've been having their proxies who've actually been destabilized quite a lot by Israel. From the Hamas, the Hezbollah, quite a number of them. And now, Israel actually decided to take the battle to Iran. We don't know how long it's going to take, because actually, when World War II started, people are saying that, hey, before the end of December, this war will be done. However, it didn't take that much. It took longer than people expected. So, peace is actually good for everyone. We don't know what will happen to other countries. We might feel good, like I am in Kenya and I'm saying, oh, thank God there are no missiles flying over our airspace. However, things can change in a second. Let's remember one of the local case of Baby Pendo. It said it was a stray bullet. There was also the issue of Satri Nosinya, a stray bullet. So people can be fighting, you're not actually involved in the fight. But then, you happen to be collateral damage. Just imagine a stray bullet coming at you, or a stray missile coming at your country. So, and then Iran be like, hi guys, sorry, we didn't mean, the missile was not meant to attack you, it was meant to attack other people. Well, that would be detrimental. Just imagine, these things have built by human, and to human is error. What would happen if it's misrouted and goes to somewhere else, maybe even to an ally of Iraq, because Iraq has had some of the partners that are really supporting them in this war. We don't know whether they will take part in the war or not. These are some of the things that we are looking at, the escalations, what could happen. Because China, Russia, and other Muslim countries, Islamic State countries in the Middle East, have categorically stated their support for Iran. However, the USA and Israel have gained support from, of course, the Western countries, the US, the UK. We've also heard France being vocal that the Iranian regime cannot have nuclear weapons. Same case as Australia. So, what will be the end game of this? I've been really trying to research about this thing, and when you try to look at the media and the stories that they are giving, you come to realize that Githeri media does not only exist in Africa, but it goes beyond the borders. Because when you look at the stories that are being given, whether it's by CNN, by BBC, France 24, Of course, there's this one mediocre station called Fox. I don't like watching them a lot because they're always talking about the idiot Trump, and I'm not one of the fans of Trump a lot. And there will always be a lot of misinformation, so you always have to look at two sides of the story. I've been following also this issue with Al Jazeera a lot, and a lot is happening, and you really don't know whether they are giving an impartial story or there are some of the stories that are not being told. Because from the perspective that the Western media is trying to give this story, it's the mediocre story of we are the good guys. These guys, the Iranians, are the bad guys. They are the terrorists. They are the ones doing all the bad things. But sometimes you get to wonder, is that really the case? Is that always the case? Well, that is not always the case because we've seen Israel itself doing a lot of bad things. For example, the attacks in Gaza. There was a video that was trending a month or two ago where they attacked medics that were going to take help in Gaza. People who were in ambulances. They were attacked and killed. So, I mean, look at what Israel has done in the Gaza Strip. What they've done in Lebanon. They've really done atrocities, hit civilians, but now the same problem has come at them. Iran don't care. They are attacking them where it hurts the most. And whether Israel wins or loses this war, of which actually maybe they might win. I'm not rooting for anyone to win. I'm actually rooting for peace. But whether they win or lose, they will have suffered detrimentally from finances, losing people. It's hard to recover from war because imagine something that you've built for over 20 years being grounded in one day, losing lives a lot. I was actually reading that their stock exchange had been hit. An airport of theirs had been hit. Well, they had retaliated and hit other 6 airports in Iran. But we just have to wait and see how it unfolds. Now, when Trump came in to this matter, we are looking at it. Might this become the Third World War? We just hope it doesn't because we don't know whether Russia is going to back Iran or whether China will also decide to back Iran because they are trading partners. They buy oil both China and Russia buy oil from Iran. We just have to see how it unfolds. And for me, I feel like in as much as we say that there were nukes that were bombarded, but I feel like Israel had the agenda of a regime change in their mind. And that's why they would go ahead to bombard the Israel state TV station. Imagine, Mwanamisi Ahmadi wa Iran was just reading news like I am. And then, behind the scenes, boom! Masai mengi. So utafanya nini? Retaliate, Buddha.
Sisi tulikuwa mboka. Masai mengi. Utadu. Una retaliate.
Retaliate. Una diglo. So, Iran ilibidi retaliate. And in their retaliation, well, of course, US came in and Khamenei said that there would be detrimental, that whatever was going to happen then would have everlasting consequences. That it would have everlasting consequences. I really don't have the right words, but I'll just put the tweet here for you to see what Khamenei said. And actually, after the US attacked, we saw an attack at the US base in Qatar. The US base in Qatar was actually attacked sometime. Is it yesterday or today in the morning? Around today in the morning, where the US base in Qatar was attacked. Well, it is an attack that didn't last long because all the missiles were intercepted. Actually, it's called the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. It belongs to US, and it's the biggest military base that the US has in the Middle East, while it has others in Syria that have also been hit. But now the question is whether the US and Iran and Israel win this war. What are the stakes? Because they could have opened a can of worms. It could be a room for terrorism. If you've watched one movie that I usually try to recommend, if you really have to understand on the motives of terrorism and a little bit of geopolitics, it's good to watch the movie Jack Ryan, season 1. In season 1, Jack Ryan is trying to investigate Suleiman, who is a terrorist from Lebanon. So Suleiman remembers how his mother died while he was young due to some bombing that happened to their home. And he could always remember what happened. Then he goes ahead to study in France, tries to find a job. But even as he tries to find a job in France, he encounters racism. And these things put a heart of vengeance in him, where he's like, these people don't respect our culture, they don't respect our religion, they don't view us as people, they think we are better than them. Which, is it actually true that there's racism? That some people think that they are more equal than others because they are from a certain part of the world? Yes, it is true. So, though that could be enough motive for war. Even if Israel was to win this war, what happens when a terrorism attack happens in the next 2-3 years? Will we have said that they won or they lost? What will really happen? We really hope that is not that will not be the case, and we don't want to see cases of terrorism in any way. However, as matters are continuing, and as long as we do not solve the issues that are there, then we might be seeing this issue escalating further, because I'm a firm believer that this war can only be solved by a five-letter word: sorry. It's a war of egos, and if both parties said sorry, because while Israel say that they have been threatened that that their nation will be wiped off the face of the earth by the Iranian regime, what actually sparked them to utter such disgusting words? Why would someone wish you death so much? Why can't the international community try to heal the motives of the war? Also, when Israel goes to do attacks and actually do what they did in Gaza, why can the international community call them out for what it is, what they have done in Gaza? Because it's not right. It's not the right thing to do. If you have to talk about people's rights, then it cannot be one side of the story. It cannot be when one of your own is hurt, but when the other side is not there, then you just keep quiet. Which is one of the things that have actually sparked anger among most civilians, not only in Israel, in Iran, but also in the US, because the US citizens are saying, this was not our fight. Trump, you actually promised us that you will make America great again, you will put the interests of the Americans first, and that there will be no war. Well, see who's at war now. The attacks are continuing. We don't know what will really happen. So Trump went ahead to join the Israel war under Netanyahu's requests, and there's been a lot of opposition from the Americans. They're saying, this is not our war. But of course, Trump, being as dumb as he is, he went ahead to bombard the nuclear sites and actually gave a speech with a lot of what would call, in Kenya we call it kiburi.
Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
Pride. With his kiburi, he was there saying that, hey, no other military could have done what we have done. No other military in the world could have done the kind of strikes we've done. That the strikes were actually spectacular. That was actually the word that he used. He said they were spectacular, accurate, and with speed. And that if actually Iran was to actually try to retaliate, then they would be met with even more brutal falls. People are wondering, oh, you think that it's only the US military that can do that? Are you sure? Trump, are you sure? Do you remember the economic issue that came up with China and your tariffs? And how China got to humble the US? It was just a while ago, showing that most of the products that US brags about are actually made in China, and that they receive quite a high amount of money for them. Well, it's that kiburi, it's that kind of pride, it's that kind of speaking that actually will try to raise emotions in this game. And if maybe China were to say, oh, so US, you think you're better than us, then let's flex muscles. If Russia was to think of it in the same way, of which actually, after the US bombarded Iran's nuclear site, Iran actually went ahead to Russia, tried to talk with Russia to see how they would maybe help them. We are not definite whether Russia will take part in the fight, whether China will also take part in the fight, but we hope to see how the drama unfolds. And while Iran looks cornered, they've actually said that they are not going to retaliate. And actually, one of the things that they've done, because war can be fought in so many ways apart from military action. So they are saying that they are going to cross the Strait, or I don't know, the Persian Gulf. It's called the Strait of Hormuz. Nika stretch Kenya. It controls around 20% of the world's oil production. If they are to block the Strait of Hormuz, or they are to close that strait, then it would mean that countries such as the UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, Iran itself, and Iraq would have challenges exporting their oil. And it's actually said that most ships move there. And some of the countries that would suffer if that strait is closed include China, other countries such as Taiwan, Australia, all these countries that import oil. If the Strait of Hormuz is to be closed, then we are looking at a disruption in the supply chains. What would it happen? I'm a fan of, I've always looked at everything from an advantage and a disadvantage. Well, the disadvantages of war are detrimental, but there comes quite a number of evolutions. We can remember like the Industrial Revolution that happened after World War II. After this World War and there is a disruption in the supply chains, what will happen? Remember what COVID did, and there was a disruption in the supply chains. And actually, as we are continuing to heal, there has been quite a lot of changes and economies are changing. Right now, I don't feel that the US has the upper hand as it always used to say, as it always used to do. Like right now, it's not in the 1940s or 1950s where you'd say you have a monopoly of violence over every other person. You can do what you want, like they did in Japan, where they attacked with atomic bombs and then say, oh, it was so bad, let the war stop at that. This was so bad. Well, the other countries who have always been in the global south, they are catching up and they are questioning the status quo. Because look at Iran. Despite being sanctioned by America, they've been actually trading and they've moved quite ahead with their with their trades. But now let's go back to Trump and his kiburi. Trump says that Iran should not retaliate and that they should come back to the negotiating table. Iran say that they never left the negotiating table. So this puts Trump in hot soup because this gives proper reason for impeachment. Will he be impeached because Americans are saying that this is not their war? We've seen that the issues have started beginning in Senate and they are discussing on Trump's actions, saying together with Netanyahu's action. Listen to what these senator had to say. Let's start with Billy Sanders. Listen to what Billy Sanders had to say.
Supporting Netanyahu's war against Iran would be a catastrophic mistake. Instead of going to war, Trump must work with the international community to rein in Netanyahu and urgently push for a diplomatic solution.
Well, Trump says that there's no other military that could have done what the US have done. But US are wondering, is this our war really? They say no. Did we have any motive? No. Well, threats is actually a motive, but how long ago was that threat? Because Israel has always been saying from around 20 years ago, 22, that Iran is almost on the verge of making a nuclear bomb. The story has never changed. They are only 1 year away, less than a year. Listen, look at this footage. Listen to what Netanyahu had to say. So let's even assume that the threat is real. Was the solution bombarding? Because it said that actually Russia are allies to the nuclear program that is in Iran. So the fact that there are other nations that are aware of the nuclear programs, and Iran has actually said that the nuclear programs that they hold are not for actually making weapons, but actually as for creating energy. But nobody asks that whether Israel has nuclear weapons. It said that actually Israel has nuclear weapons, but nobody questions them. They are not actually, according to the IAEA, they are not actually supposed to hold nuclear weapons. But nobody asked that question. The fierce prime minister of Iran had that question to ask. Why is it that nobody asked about Israel?
Mr. Minister, how do you assess the West's stance on Israel massacres? No one seems to mention Israel's allegedly illegal nuclear weapons. The German Chancellor even said Israel is doing the dirty work for us. So what is your response? Thank you.
Well, what should I say? You said everything. That Iran is under attack by a nuclear-armed superpower and a nuclear-armed regime. And Iran, as you know, is a non-nuclear-armed country. That should be certainly condemned. If not, the whole non-proliferation regime would be undermined and would be defeated. Iran is a committed member of NPT. But NPT is not able to protect us.
Because actually, if you have to look at this issue, the IAEA have been trying to dig deeper on whether is it true that these guys have nuclear weapons. They've been trying to make investigations, and they've been really on Iran's case. And the IAEA said actually they have nuclear facilities but are not making nuclear weapons. So that does not fully justify why Trump had to take the action he had to take. Better still, there was the Congress had not passed this. So we wait to see how it goes. But for me, my biggest worry would be that he actually opens the doors of terrorism, because it does not actually, the vengeance does not actually have to come from Iran. Just imagine that there's a boy who lost his family in Iran. He's looking at it and saying that one day I'll lay vengeance for my siblings. One day I will avenge for my grandpa. I will avenge for my sister, for my mother. And it's not only Iran. Look at also Israel. There might be an Israel kid, Muisraeli, alienda huko akaangalia kwao, kai. You people have bombarded my home like this. This was why we used to play with my kids, with our neighbors. Now, this house is no more. These flats are no more. One day, I'll do it for Israel. I'll go and avenge. I'll go in Iran and avenge. And that puts a lot of people in unwanted danger. And then you'll always be doing rushing about, you'll always be worried about terrorist attacks. You don't want to live always looking on your back. And now, I feel that by the involvement of the US in this war, Trump has actually opened the gates of terrorism, which is not actually what we want to see, but we would really like to hope that there's a lasting solution to this issue. But what would be the lasting solution? For me, I feel it's respect to one another, respect to people's values, even when they don't differ to yours. Forget about exporting these democracy things. Oh, you are the one who cares about human rights more than others. Let people be. Let people live according to their culture. And then people will also let you live according to your culture, because the Western world has always tried to put itself as the SI unit of morality. We are the ones who know what should be done, is right or wrong. Is that always the case? Really? Would we say that? We've seen how much they control, and it's always about their interest. Their interest is always which takes them there. And actually, I was watching on one of the diplomats of Russia being interviewed, where he was saying that earlier they had tried to talk about the issue of diplomacy with actually the Secretary Rubio, the Secretary of State Rubio, about negotiations and Americans and what is their interest. And they said that the American policy, the USA policy, is always based on the country's interests, their own national interests. And that got to wonder, well, if you are going to formulate your policy based on your own interest, then other countries can also formulate their policies based on their own interest, which is why we are looking at Russia. They have interests in Iran. China have interest in Iran. What about when they are to protect their own interest? What will happen? And now, US escalates this fight and actually looks to China. Hey, brother, these people actually want to close the Strait of Hormuz. You know, if they close this strait, we are not going to lose as you will. Actually, you guys are going to lose more because your oil will not move. Hey, US, who told you that all ships will not be passing through there? Maybe Iran can decide that we're only going to let the Chinese ships sail through. What about yours? What will happen? And when the military base in Syria was attacked, people got wondering, why is there actually a military base in Syria, yet they are not actually legally allowed to be there? There's no congression that passed that, oh, we have a military base in Syria. So if you are to retaliate in regards to that military base that is in Syria, then you are to be told, hey, we actually are not aware of what you are doing there. What are your interests there? We've seen the same with Africa, where we are having military base, American interest, UK interest, French interest, and it's always economic, stealing resources from these countries and always crippling the economy. Would this be the one freedom that we've always wanted against the US? Could this war be just that one thing that helps everyone go back to their home? Let everyone live at their own place. Could it really help? We don't know. We don't know whether Iran is fighting a losing battle or there are other people who are going to back it up. We've seen quite a number of nations strongly condemn the actions that US took, especially in the Middle East. And if they are going to be allies to Iran, then quite a lot is going to be seen. Remember, I was talking about that attack on the US military base in Qatar. Although there were some mild missiles, we don't know whether it was intentional or not. We don't know how much weapons that Iran has to sustain this fight, because they were very categorical on saying that we are going to fight for as long as it takes. When Iraq attacked us, we went ahead to fight for 9 years. And even right now, we are ready to fight, and we are not going down without putting up a fight. I feel that maybe Israel gambled on taking out the leadership, striking the snake on the head, and it didn't really quite work as the way it did, or as the way it expected. They didn't expect such kind of losses that they have experienced. And now let's look ahead on what goes to happen. I really hope that this war of egos will stop, and that these two men can just say, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, will heal all these baggages, all these wounds that seem to have lasted over the years. I really don't want to go back to the history of these two countries and what has happened. But when I look at both sides of the story, we've all wronged each other. Actually, the Bible says that we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So we've all wronged each other, but let's live in mutual respect, not massaging each other's egos, saying who's stronger and who's not. Because I'm a person who believes if I beat you and we are fighting, I punch you in the face, and let's say that punch, it's an uppercut. Let's give it an uppercut. I give you an uppercut. An uppercut whose value is worth $50 in strength or in pain. So I give you an uppercut whose value or whose pain value can be put as around $50. Then you punch me in the liver. Not quite a strong punch, but just $25. Let's assume $25. Yes, you might have punched harder, but I punched you. You also felt the pain. So that's why I always believe that in violence, when it comes to violence, there are never winners or losers. You might beat me, you might subdue me, but that doesn't mean that I went away feeling good. I'll always feel like I can always go back, work harder, and the next time we meet, then I'll fight you in a bigger way. And we don't always have to fight, the way you fight a bully. You might decide, I'm not going to fight you through violence, because if I'm fighting you through violence, then brutal force, you win. But there are other many ways of fighting a fight. We've seen Iran as given the issue of economic wars, then there are issues of fears for terrorism. What is the worst that could happen? We just have to wait and see, and really hope that something happens so quickly, because as of now, as we were talking before I started shooting this pod, I had seen Trump saying that there has been an agreement for a ceasefire between Iran and Israel, and that in the next 6 to 12 hours that the 2-week-long fight will have stopped. Is that really the case? We just have to look and see how it happens, because from what I see, Iran is a nation of proud people and who've categorically said that they are not going to heed to any imposed war. They're not going to surrender to any imposed war or imposed peace. And they don't want the narrative to be spinned. We just have to look and see how it goes. Let's hope for the best, and we always pray for peace.
ملت ایران در مقابل جنگ تحمیلی محکم می ایسته، همچنانی که تا حالا ایستاده. در مقابل صلح تحمیلی محکم می ایسته. ملت ایران در مقابل تحمیل تسلیم هیچ کس نمیشه. ثانیاً اینی که به ملت ایران بگن بیایید تسلیم بشید، حرف عاقلانه ای نیست. افراد با خرد که میشناسن ایران رو، میشناسن ملت ایران رو، میشناسن تاریخ ایران رو، هرگز چنین حرفی رو بر زبان جاری نمیکنن. تسلیم چی بشن؟ ملت ایران تسلیم شدنی نیست. صدمه آمریکا اگر ورود در این میدان بشه، ورود نظامی در این میدان بکنه، صدمه جبران ناپذیری خواهد بود بدون تردید.